you so much. Please be seated. It's very good to see you again. This is civil action number 2013, CP 40-6435, Rosina Nelson versus Early Walker and others. This is a partition action, and when I preside over partitions, I always make sure that everybody in the courtroom is identified, because usually obviously it's a family issue, and it gets pretty emotional. And I know in this case there's someone's complaint as well as an answer and counterclaim. We're all on the same page. You understand, Mr. Arnold? Okay. One moment, please. Let me ask everyone in the courtroom to identify themselves, starting from left to right in front. Sir?
Robert M. Seymour III.
All right.
Wayne Floyd.
Okay. Surratt?
Andrew Surratt.
Hugh Cooper.
All right. Sir, what's your name?
Heath Hill.
All right. Sir?
Johnny Jones.
Okay, Ms. Jones.
Nina Nelson.
All right, Ms. Nelson.
Rosina Nelson.
All right, Ms. Nelson.
India Early.
Okay, Mr. Big, okay. This is a partition action, and now I understand under the statute that the family, if someone wants to sell the property and divide up the money as opposed to divide up the property, that the family member would have a right of first refusal. Have y'all looked at that in this particular case? Mr. Surratt?
We have, Your Honor, I don't believe that the only family member that is opposed to the partition is Mr. Seymour III, who is here. And I don't believe that's a viable alternative for this property.
Mr. Floyd, Mr. Seymour, are you willing to buy out your family members?
By my family member?
Buy them out, yeah. In other words, if you don't agree with what they want to do, are you position?
I don't mind them selling with their portion, but I'm here for my father's portion. That he has a will, Rosa Seymour had a will, and this whole thing is about not honoring her wishes. And I don't want to be a part of dishonoring somebody's wishes.
Okay.
It takes a lot of energy to not honor them. It takes less energy to do what they ask for.
Okay. Isn't that the kind of thing that should be resolved in probate court? Should have been resolved? I assume your father's deceased, I think.
Pardon me?
Your father's deceased? He's
Yes.
Okay, and there was a state open forum when he passed?
Yes.
Who was the personal representative of the estate?
Richard Seymour.
All right,
And that was my brother, and he passed, and I was a representative, appointed to represent him and all the things that he had in that.
that was in probate court.
Yes.
Now, was there a disposition of your father's interest in probate court?
He said
Was there a deed of distribution passing the land from your father to his children, or?
well, he didn't ever get his property. It was never settled. He tried to get it, and this is what I present to the court to show that he tried. There's a letter written by the representative of Rosa Seymour's estate, and it wasn't true. But that's why I said I put this package together and want to present this to the court so you can go over that.
All right, what's in the package? I'm not going to look at it now.
Okay, a letter from the representative of the state, and that during that time they were trying to find a will. They said one didn't exist. She wrote a letter to the attorneys at that time. That's when they responded back to my letter. My attorney wrote to her, and that's when they found out that she did have a will, and they wondered why it wasn't probated, and so they get she wouldn't cooperate.
All right, let me make sure I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Seymour. Are you here to protect your own interest, or
No.
you're not?
No.
All right, now whose interest are you trying to protect?
Not protect. In other words, my father wrote a will. He specified what he wanted done. Rosa Seymour had a will, and she specified what she wanted done. Why it wasn't done. Why we get 30 or 40 years, 30-something years later, about the same thing, which could have, taken care of a long time ago.
All right, I'm going to use a legal phrase, I'm asking in layman's term. All right, what gives you standing to fight for somebody who's been deceased for a while? In other words,
I mean, they left a will, that's why the will is when you're deceased. You want your wishes to be taken, followed out.
now, are you the personal representative of that estate?
Which one?
Either one.
Rosa Seymour.
Your brother.
Rosa Seymour is junior.
Your brother, that's
my father.
His father, okay, I want to make sure, there's a lot of people saying last name involved in this case. All right, but this is a partition, this is not a will contest that we heard most typically in probate court. And you decided in the partition to fight for somebody else, not for yourself. I mean, do you have the right to do that? Now, I asked the lawyer to give an opinion on that, but do you have a dispute as far as what you would receive after the partition?
Well, I mean, if he had gotten his land when he should have, his portion of the will, with the will specified, this wouldn't be a non-factor. His will would have been taken. He wrote with it, and what he wanted done was his portion in his will. But by being denied that, that's why I'm here today, to make sure that part happened.
But I'm not the probate judge. And I'm not here to preside over a will contest, because I didn't think I was. This is a partition, and you're saying you don't think it should go through because what happened to your father to get what he was supposed to get.
Right. But actually, I didn't pick this court. I don't know the proper procedure. The representative should have had all this done a long time ago. I haven't been to every kind of court there is. And it seemed like, because we were to another one before this one. I don't know why they picked this one.
Well, this is circuit court, and the master in equity is a division of circuit court. And this was referred to me by a circuit judge or the clerk of court because we generally hear these type of cases. And the rules, once a case is... And once a case is referred to the master in equity, I have the same power as a Supreme Court judge.
That's what I'm saying. I couldn't understand why they always would change it around. Seems like that's a tactical maneuver to prolong this process.
Judge, can I raise kind of a housekeeping issue with you? As you know, Mr. Seymour filed an answer on his own behalf, pro se. I later filed a notice of appearance in the case. After discussing this matter with Mr. Seymour, it's my request that I be allowed to withdraw his attorney. And he is going to represent himself at the hearing. He wishes to go forward with the hearing.
Okay, Mr. Seymour III. You agree with what Mr. Floyd said?
And I will be refunding his fee, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sorry, say it again, sir.
And I will be refunding his fee to him.
Do you agree that he should be the lead counsel?
Pardon me?
He wants to pull out the case.
Oh, yeah, he told me that earlier.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, if he wants to.
Do you want time to get another attorney?
No, once I present these papers, I mean, I'm leaving it in your hands.
Second, leave it in my hands?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Floyd, in that case, maybe excuse you.
Thank
Motion
you.
granted, and
Thank you.
on the record, I don't know if we need a written order or not, but your motion's granted.
Thank you. And he's an intelligent man. He can present his case, and I think it's a pretty succinct case. And I think he'll tell you himself that basically his father was that 15 acres, and he wants to enforce that if he could.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Red, call your first witness.
Your Honor, before I do that, I'd kind of like to give a little background and respond to what Mr. Seymour had to say.
Sure.
First of all, the property was originally owned by Rosa Seymour, and we have her will to be introduced. Her will gave 15 acres to each of her children, and then 10 acres property around the house to her great-grandchildren, which we have interpreted to be great-grandchildren who are alive at the time of her death. Mr. Robert Seymour Jr. was one of her 6 children, and reading the will as written, he would have been entitled to 15 acres Mr. Seymour died, and he has bequeathed his property to his children. And so we calculate based on the number of children that he had, that Mr. Seymour III is entitled to 3 acres. Now, all of his siblings who inherited from his father have signed a contract to sell the property. So even if his position is that 15 acres should be set aside, he would be facing another partition action right away to divide that 15 acres, and he would wind up with 3 acres in kind if he's not willing to participate in the sale of the property. So, and we are willing to have commissioners appointed to set aside his 3 acres. With the following caveat, Mr. Hill, who is here, has signed a contract with all of the heirs except Mr. Seymour to purchase the property. And if we can't agree on where that 3 acres is to go, he has a place where he would be willing to set that 3 acres. If it's set in a place that makes the rest of the property unusable for his purposes, and he's been renting the property and farming it, then he would back out of the contract, and then we'd be back at square one. So our position is very simply, Mr. Seymour III is entitled to 3 acres. And we have a place that has road frontage that we would be willing to give him. But we don't believe that he has the right to represent anyone's interest other than his own, and that his siblings have already expressed their thought on the property because they've signed the contract to sell the property as a whole. So I think Mr. Seymour needs to make a decision as to whether or not he wants 3 acres set out to him by using commissioners, and he would have to participate in the cost of the commissioners, or if he's willing to go along with the sale and get his pro rata share of the net proceeds. And we need for him to make that decision.
All right, call your first witness, please.
All right. Your Honor, I'm going to call Rosina Nelson. I'm sorry. Nina Nelson. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Please raise your right hand so I can swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like the court to take notice of the last will of Rosa Seymour that is filed for probate in Richland County in 90 ES 40 1007. The will stated May 6th of 1980.
Okay. Seymour, you have any objection to that?
I already have one.
You don't object to him to be taking judicial notice of it and make it mark it as an exhibit? Have to speak up loud.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So the will is in 2 parts.
Hold on a second. She has some part things. All right, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
The will is in 2 parts. There is the dispositive provisions, and then there is a codicil which he changed the name of the personal representative.
All right, okay.
All right. Ms. Nelson, who is your mother?
Rosina Nelson.
And Rosina Nelson is the plaintiff in this action, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, have you read the complaint in this action?
Yes.
And it sets forth that Rosa Seymour died in 1983 and bequeathed the property to her 6 children and her great-grandchildren, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And have we named in the complaint the correct people who survived Rosa Seymour?
Yes.
All right. And Robert Seymour Jr., who was one of her children, is deceased, is that correct?
Yes.
And we have named his wife, who has subsequently died after the filing of this action, is that correct?
Yes.
And his children. Richard Seymour was survived by 1 child, is that correct, Richard Jr.?
He has 2 children, but at the time of my grandmother's death, he only had 1.
Okay, so just Richard Jr. And that other child was that Sierra?
That is Sierra.
Okay, and she was born after Rosa Seymour died?
Yes.
All right. And Helen Clark was survived by her daughter and a grandchild, Vicky and Quinnell.
Yes.
All right. And so the interests are set forth correctly in the complaint as far as you know? And has the family, and you're not actually an heir, are you?
No, my
Okay.
mother's still alive.
Okay. All right, now, I'm going to show you this document. This is a plat. Is this a correct petition of the property? All right. And the property is in two parts, one on one side of Adams Scott Road and the other on the other side of it. And a couple of parcels have been sold out, is that correct?
Exactly.
John, we would introduce that.
Okay. Any objections, Seymour?
That's good.
Motion granted. One moment.
All right, now, with the exception of Robert Seymour III, has the family entered into a contract of sale to sell the property to Mr. Heath Hill?
Yes.
Is this a copy of that contract? Your Honor, I move to introduce that. Seymour?
I got a copy.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I have a copy of that.
You don't object to it coming in as evidence?
No.
Okay. One moment, please. Your motion is granted, sir.
Mark?
Your motion is granted. Let me mark it as it. Please proceed.
All right, now, that contract has been signed by everyone who has an interest in that property with the exception of Robert Seymour III, is that correct? All right. Now, is the family asking that the property be partitioned to set aside Mr. Seymour III's share and have the remaining property sold to Mr. Hill?
If that's what he wants, they don't have a problem with him getting his land
Okay.
and everybody else the proceeds.
All right. If we were to do that, then we would have to appoint commissioners to divide his 3 acres out. Do you understand how that works?
Yes.
All right. Do you believe, and do you think your mother believes, that the sales price set forth in the contract is a fair sales price, represents the fair market value of the property?
I believe so. It's just been going on so long, and I just hope it isn't, got some more expenses, I'm thinking, with the taxes and everything that has occurred for the last 3 years that could have been avoided had we done it in,
Who has paid the taxes on the property?
Ms. Nelson was paying the taxes on the property, and I think the last 3 years, Mr. Hill,
Mr. Hill's paid those taxes.
the last 3 years. And actually, there was an agreement that they had to either pay the taxes, or pay to farm the land. So he just paid the taxes.
All right. Would you all prefer to sell the entire parcel and to give Mr. Seymour his proportionate share of the net proceeds, the cash proceeds?
Sure, if that's what he wants.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Would you answer any questions that Mr. Seymour may have?
Any questions for Ms. Nelson, sir?
To her?
Yes, sir.
Yes, at first I heard that they had somebody else paying the taxes on the property. Actually,
Now, if you have questions, ask a question. I'll give you a chance to give your side of the story at some point. But right now, this is called
but I
cross-examination.
don't have no questions for that.
Okay, you get a chance to present your side. All right, thank you, man. Watch your step coming down.
Okay. Say what I'm looking at. It was not.
Sure, that usually,
We can do it in there.
Well, no. What topic is it relevant to what your testimony is?
Just relevant to the fact that it's just caused a lot of stress on all of the siblings of Rosa Seymour to prolong this long. They're all ill now, in which back in the time when they decided to do this, they were able to really enjoy the the proceeds would have been, would have been given to them from their mother.
Okay.
And that's all. I'm saying it's
All right.
kind of tasking on them. My mother's not online, but she could see back then.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Watch yourself coming in. All right, Mr. Surratt?
Your Honor, I call John Jones, please.
J-O-H-N-N-Y, Jones.
Please raise your right hand so I can swear you in.
Oh,
There you go. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, would you please state your full name and where you work for the court?
Understand?
No, sir. Please be seated.
My name is Johnny Jones. I'm a realtor with Williams & Williams Realty Company.
All right, and how long have you been,
Stop for a second. Who's the owner of that company?
Mr. William, Bill Williams.
Bill Williams? Okay. I have a relationship with Mr. Williams. We go back as church members for a while. I don't go to that church anymore. But he also manages property that I own now. Now, I disclose that. I don't know if that's a problem for anybody involved. Mr. Richard Seymour III, is that a problem for you? You prefer another judge?
No, sir, Judge.
You don't have a problem with that. And you understand what I said? That the person that owns your business manages property for me. I didn't want to wear that one just now. I've never met Mr. Jones, I don't think.
No, I've seen you, but we haven't formally met.
Right. So is that a problem for you, sir? I don't know.
it's not a problem for me, Your Honor. Mr. Jones is really going to express an opinion on that.
Okay. And that's not a problem for you again, Mr. Seymour?
If you fine with it, Judge, I'm fine with it.
Okay, I'm fine with it, but, because I didn't know. But if you're not fine with it, you can speak up right now.
No, I'm fine with it, sir.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please proceed.
Mr. Jones, how long have you been a realtor?
30 plus years.
All right. Are you familiar with property in the area where this property is?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And have you been involved in the marketing and sale of this property?
Not tracks as large personally, but I've sold other smaller tracks and homes in that area.
All right.
And I do have comps that cover the area that we get involved in.
Are you familiar with the contract that Mr. Hill has signed to purchase this property?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you familiar with the price that he has agreed to pay for it?
Yes.
How much has he agreed to pay for this property?
We had to make an adjustment because they had to, they found some, and it was surveyed, it was a little more land found than it was originally thought. So I think we started at 200 and that we ended up at about 220, I believe is the sales price now.
$220,000?
Right.
All right, and that, based on your review of the comparable sales, is that a fair market value for the property?
Yes, sir. The tracts of land that size are not sold that often, so I had to go back. I think my comps go back from 01 up through last year, and the price, the lowest price I found for a tract that size was about just $1,800 per acre, up to about $2,300 per acre. And I did the calculation on the original, what we thought was the acreage, and on the bigger tract. And on the smaller tract, naturally it came out a little more per acre. It was $22,684 per acre. And when we did found the extra acres, the price per acre came down a little, but that still was $21,35.92 per acre, what it averaged out to be. And the comps, like I said, that I found with tracts comparable in size range from about $1,700 to $2,300 per acre. And that covers a period from 01 to 2014.
All right, now this property fronts on Bluff Road, is that correct?
Correct.
That's a state-maintained highway.
Yes, sir.
All right, and then it has a road that runs in through the middle of it.
That is correct.
And is that a paved road or a
No,
dirt road?
it's a gravel dirt road.
All right. Is that a county-maintained road?
I'm not sure if the county maintains that or not. I'm not really sure, but I think they do.
All right. Are there any special provisions or conditions on this particular property that would increase or decrease its value from other property in the area?
No, not that I'm aware of.
And in your opinion as a realtor, do you think that is a fair price for this property?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Would you answer any questions Mr. Seymour may have?
Yes, sir.
I have it.
Joe, sometimes in non-jury cases, the judge will ask questions.
Yes, sir.
How big a tract of land is it?
It's 103 acres, 103 acres.
100 feet.
That's more or less because when we first started, one survey said it was 97 point something. And then we ended up with 103. So it's somewhere right in between that.
Now, if the sale goes through, are you going to get a commission off of this?
I hope to.
And how much are you asking? Or how is the contract provided?
The contract provides 10% of the price, but we didn't adjust the price when we found the bigger acres. So our price would be based on the original amount that the extra acres that was found that we actually would be entitled to be paid on. We didn't adjust the contract accordingly.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You may come down. Watch step come down.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I call detail.
Watch steps sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and help you God? Thank you.
Ms. Hill, would you state your full name for the court and where you live?
Harold T. Hill, 8534 Bluff Road. Is my address, or my mailing address, post office box 174 Eastover, South Carolina, 29044.
And how long have you lived in the Eastover area?
All my life.
All right. And are you familiar with this property that comes out of the Rosa Seymour estate?
Yes, I live directly across from it.
All right. And do you have anything? Do you do anything on this property? Do you have a relationship with the family on this property?
I farmed it when I put the sales contract on it. That was in agreement that I would farm it, which that is my occupation, is farming. And that I would farm it like between 25 and 30 acres on it for this farming property. The rest of it was wood. And that was into, and I thought I had it closed and everything would have been here and after, but that was into the contract of sale is I would start farming at the time. And that's what I do.
And what do you grow there?
I grow soybeans, peanuts, corn, and cotton.
How's the land?
Land is fine.
Okay. All right. Now, are you familiar with the survey, which is exhibit number 2?
Yes.
Is that your understanding of what the property, the configuration of the property?
Yes.
And you agreed to pay approximately $220,000 for this property.
Yes.
Do you believe that's a fair price for this property?
Yes.
It's not a steal, is it?
No, sir.
It's close to fair market value?
Yes. And I'd like to say something too, referring back to Mr. Jones a minute ago. The reason what happened with the acres is because of the right of way with the roads. And that's when it had to be surveyed so they could get the right of way with the roads straightened out. I just want to read over on that.
All right. Is it your understanding that you signed a contract with all of the Seymour heirs with the exception of Robert Seymour III?
No, I thought, when I signed Mr. Jones, I thought we had everything, that everything was fine.
All right. Do you understand now that Mr. Seymour, Robert Seymour III claims an interest in the property and he's not willing to sign the contract?
Yes.
All right. If the property goes through to partition, entitled to approximately 3 acres of property
Right,
set aside for him.
right.
Are you okay with that as long as the property is placed in a location that would be not interfere with your plans for the property?
That could be worked out. That could be worked out, but when I signed it, I signed the contract for the complete part of the property.
Thank you, sir. Would you answer any questions that Mr. Seymour III has?
Be glad to.
Seymour?
Yes, how much you were paying for rent, to rent the land?
When I paid the contract, because it was, I think Mr. Jones put in a 90-day contract.
No, I'm talking about for the whole duration.
Hold on a second. Yeah, you can't ask.
I think when we first signed the contract, that was in the contract because I think it was like in January.
I'm talking about for the whole duration. How much were you paying a year for the rent?
I wouldn't pay nothing, I paid the contract. The contract, we would be closing the thing within 3 months.
How long have you been renting the land?
I've been following the land since 2012, I think, 11 or 12.
Since 2012?
11 or 12, whenever the contract was done, that was in the contract.
You've been following that longer than that.
Hold on a second. Let him finish his answer, you can answer.
And let me tell you, who found before me was my cousin, it was not me.
Was who?
That was my cousin, it was not me.
Oh, you good, okay.
That was not me found it, I found it once I signed the contract. When I signed the contract, it was in the contract that I would start with the farming that year.
How much were you paying?
When we was going to close the contract, it was in the contract that I was to farm the land when we closed the
How much were you
I
paying?
didn't pay anything for it was in the contract. When I signed the contract to buy the property, it was in the contract, I would start farming immediately.
So in other words, you hadn't paid anything up to that
I haven't paid
point?
anything, I have let the realtor have money to pay the taxes because the property was fixed to be sold at the tax sale. I've got around $20,000 tied up in it to save the property from being sold at tax sale. And also to have...
Judge, I can't get an answer out of how much you've been paying for rent.
Hold on a second, stop. Okay, maybe, I think I know what you're driving at. I'm going to maybe help you a little bit. The testimony was that from Ms. Nelson, that in lieu of rent, you were going to pay the property tax. That's y'all agreed to. And I think Mr. Seymour's question simply is, how much did you pay?
I didn't pay.
No. I mean, you didn't pay rent, but how much did you pay in property taxes?
I gave the money to Mr. Jones in order to give Mr. Cooper.
Now, how much you get?
I gave him $10,000.
Can't ask him a question.
I think I gave $10,000 2 different times, Judge.
And the property is not named to be sold tax sale, is it? No, correct. That's not an issue.
Your Honor, it was sold at the tax sale, but it has been redeemed.
Okay, when was this?
This was, the redemption notice was until March 10th of 2014. That would have been the 2012 taxes. And the redemption paid was almost $4,000 for 2012. And taxes for 13 and 14 have been paid.
Okay, and Mr. Hill, your testimony is that you have paid at least $20,000.
Yes.
In taxes, but not necessarily rent for farming.
That's right, yes.
Okay, is that satisfactory, Mr. Seymour?
No, can you produce that evidence so that you paid that money?
Yes, I can produce it.
Well, Judge, I'd like you to present that information.
Like you will leave the record open unless Mr. Surratt has the receipts.
I have a tax receipts and Mr. Hill's testimony that he paid them.
So Mr. Seymour.
That's the redemption for 2012. That's this is paid through the tax sale. This is a redemption, 4,000 or 3924, and then this is the 13 taxes.
Also, while you're going through that,
This is the 14 taxes.
Oh, is that, you want to look at what he's doing?
yeah, I see it, Your Honor. See if you give me one with Roseanne Nelson's name on it. So in other words, you were giving the money to Miss Nelson to pay it?
I gave money.
I mean, her name was on that receipt.
And according to what the attorney was handling that, I gave it to Mr. Jones, made out to you Cooper for the Seymour property.
Who's you cooking?
Mr. Cooper right here.
Is the attorney.
He's one of the attorneys.
And I gave them the money because they had to pay for also the survey on the property.
Why did the property need survey?
Oh, let him finish.
It probably had to be surveyed so I know what I was buying.
So you did know going into it that the property hadn't been really turned over, or everybody.
Order, please. Order, please. Mr. Jones, order, please. I can't hear what's going on.
What it was is when I signed the contract, I had to know what the buying I was doing, what I was going to buy, and the estate had to have it surveyed because the seller has to have a recent survey.
Yeah, but you know the property wasn't sellable in the sense that it hadn't been finished. The legal work hadn't been finished on it, so I mean you went in.
I didn't know nothing about that.
I didn't know, but my name
Hold
was.
on a second.
I've done business with Mr. Williams, the realtor, Mr. Jones. He put the sign up on the property. I had a contract with Williams, the realtor, not any Seymour, not any Nelson, not anybody. I was working through the realty company. And the realty company came to me, but I told them I needed a recent survey. Because if you're gonna get it financed, you got to have a recent survey. And that was on the sales contract to start with, was a recent survey. And that's what the state of whoever the attorney what needed money to do that, so I put that money toward the purchase of the property.
Okay. Even doing that, he couldn't tell you that the property was cleared to sell because all names had been cleared.
I was doing business with the realtor, not with any Seymour now.
It made no difference.
Yes,
But in other words, he was lying to you then.
Hold on a second. I mean, that's your argument. No, you ask a question, let him answer.
Okay.
And then until you let him answer the question, then you can.
Right.
Okay.
I've done business with Williams and Williams Realty.
Pardon me?
All Williams and Williams Realty. I've done business with Williams and Williams Realty Company. The Williams and Williams sign is still on the property.
Okay.
That's who I've done business with.
Okay. But you said you understood that the property hadn't been, you did?
Question, sir. Let him finish the question.
Okay.
Go ahead. No,
Oh, no.
you got time, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir. No, but I'm saying is, Williams told you that the property was clear to sell.
Williams had it listed. I mean, when you're buying a piece of property, the title has to be checked. Everything has to be done from the time his contract. But he had a contract on the property to sell.
Oh, he could have it on sale, but it still is, you had to understand that it wasn't clear to be sold, because everybody had to sign off on it.
Your Honor, object, that's not a question.
I didn't know anything about it.
Hold on a second. I'm sorry, your objection is?
It's not a question, what he just stated.
Okay, sustain, you can just rephrase the question, sir.
Okay, did you know that, did Williams tell you that everybody hadn't signed off on the property?